In the woods on the outskirts of Pripyat lies one of the most famous relics of the disaster. A piece of machinery, as tall as a man, far more radioactive than its surroundings. This six-pronged device has since become known as the Claw of Death, and its past is shrouded in mystery. What was it used for? Why was it brought here? How old is it? And why do stalkers keep painting it pink? Today we cover a Chernobyl oddity, the Claw. Our story begins in 1986, not in the Soviet Union, but in West Germany and the town of Peine. The company, Peine Machine and Screw Works, a manufacturer of cranes and the buckets for cranes, produced just another one of its models, the MMG-1600-3. The Claw was specifically designed for reloading ore, gravel, and scrap metal, with metal plates at the bottom to prevent the grabbed objects from falling back out when the crane was closed, carrying almost 4 tons of resources using its hydraulic arms. While this made it perfect for mining operations, history opted for a different fate for the Claw. When the reactor number 4 at Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded, the roof of the reactor hall itself was blown upwards, raining back down on the turbine hall nearby. Amongst the raining debris was also graphite and nuclear fuel from inside the reactor core itself. All of this would need to be removed somehow. It was too dangerous for humans to go in there, scoop up the debris, and then drag it out of the building. Instead, cranes were built adjacent to the turbine hall, and then the buckets were lowered down to scoop out the radioactive material, which could then be disposed of, and the roof be built over the top. And it was this idea that brought the Claw to Chernobyl. It is unknown how exactly the Claw made its way from West Germany to Ukraine. Maybe it was delivered to East Germany or Poland for use there, and requisitioned for use at Chernobyl. Maybe the Soviet Union itself purchased the Claw for use at Chernobyl. Regardless, the Claw somehow did make its way to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and was even photographed inside the turbine hall, suspended by a cable. This work severely contaminated the machine, picking up scoops of graphite and core elements amongst the concrete, rebar, and metal that had been ejected through the area. When it was no longer needed, the Claw should have been disposed of, but was instead dragged to Pripyat. The scrapyard the Claw now lies in is not a vehicle scrapyard like the ones at Buryakivka, for example. This one is located adjacent to the Special Engineering Works facility, the base of operations for technicians working on robots used in the cleanup. Many remains of these robots can be found around the area, all heavily contaminated like the Claw, amongst the grass and the trees. And that should have been the end of the story. The Special Engineering Works facility was abandoned when the cleanup was finished, and the Claw and robots were left to gather dust and decay alone. In 2010, a few private guides, while on a field excursion looking through Pripyat, stumbled upon the Claw in the same place it had been left. Word spread around and, in 2011, the academic Robert Maxwell visited the Claw, recording 234 times the average background radiation inside the Claw, the most radioactive area. And from this, the popularity of the Claw exploded. A year later, a YouTuber by the name of BioNerd23 visited the Claw twice, both videos reaching tens of thousands of views. More tours began offering trips to the Claw itself, coming up with the story that the Claw had been used inside the reactor hall of Unit 4. In 2019, when the HBO miniseries was released, the Claw's popularity exploded a second time, with articles being released claiming that just one touch of the Claw would be enough to kill you. This is of course false, as radioactivity has continued to decline since its rediscovery. Some tourists even climbed inside of the Claw to take a photo. It should of course be noted that, while legal excursions into the exclusion zone often visit the Claw, it is actually forbidden legally to do so. The Claw is not on any of the official routes, and the disposal of the equipment here was irresponsible at the least. Meanwhile, some illegal tourists, otherwise known as stalkers, had their own plan for the Claw. one that would alter its future forever. They called themselves the Pink Claw Gang. They did exactly as the name suggested, spraying the claw in pink acrylic paint, as well as spraying rainbows on top of apartment buildings and colouring signs in bright colours. Their stated goal was to decommunise the exclusion zone, ironic given the claw was made in West Germany. Of course, many people were disgusted by the defacing of the claw, and some stalkers took matters into their own hands, seeing the Ukrainian government's lack of interference. They journeyed to the claw with golden spray paint and painted the claw in the colour in the hopes to restore it to its original glory. But this was not the end of the story. The graffiti artists returned, spraying the claw in white stripes. They were almost caught as well, the claw still smelling of fresh paint when it was found in its again defaced state. It was at this point that the so-called Stalk Claw War began. Some stalkers who saw Chernobyl akin to a playground would deface the claw, and stalkers who considered themselves as purists would restore it to its original colours by cleaning it or spraying golden spray paint over the top. Rain would inevitably wash away the fresh paint on occasion, and the cycle would repeat. In the 2021 documentary Inside Chernobyl with Ben Fogel, the claw itself can be sprayed in pink and white stripes, but this is not the only strange combination seen. The claw has been sprayed green several times, as well as silver and even blue. This was continued through 2021 into 2022, and was only paused by the Russia-Ukraine war, which has made access to the exclusion zone impossible. This brings us to the end of the story of the claw, from West Germany to Chernobyl, lying for decades, and then the centre of a war between what the future of the exclusion zone will be. This is just half the story. The exclusion zone will have a future, and I have no doubt in my mind that the claw will continue to be a part of that.